ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
You're listening to House of Cards.
Today, the game is different.
I want to gamble. Gambling is a very serious business. Is that clear?
Welcome to House of Cards. Dave Weishuttle with you here, deep from the swamps of Jersey. We got a great show coming up for you. Working in the gambling industry, I've been to lots of conferences. In my opinion, what makes a conference great is the location and the speakers. By that standard, the conference you're going to hear about is one of the best around. Not only does it have experts in horse racing, sports betting, and the casino industry, but it will be held at one of the most beautiful areas in this country. The Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga is being held on August 15th through the 17th in Saratoga Springs, New York. To tell us all about this amazing event, we're going to talk with its director, Pat Brown. Pat is going to tell us about an event you do not want to miss. So stick around. We'll be right back with House of Cards.
You, come here. Haven't you heard? We don't need to hide anymore. Now, we can shop privately for adult products at adamandeve.com. They've got massage oils, lingerie, and lots more we can't mention here. Use offer code SPICE404. They'll give you 50% off almost any one item, 3 free DVDs, free mystery gift, and free shipping. That's 50% off, free shipping, and more. Private shopping starts at adamandeve.com.
You're listening to House of Cards. Check out our website at houseofcardsradio.com.
Welcome back to House of Cards. Dave Weishuttle with you. Being a lawyer in the gambling industry, I've been to a lot of gaming conferences, but there's one coming up that I think is really special. Not only does it have the top experts in the gambling field, but is being held at one of the most beautiful areas in the country. It's called the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga, and it's being held on August 15th through the 17th. And we're going to find out all about it because on the line we have the conference's owner and director, Patrick Brown. Pat, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Good morning.
Good morning. Great. Always great talking to you. Pat, before we start talking about the conference, can you give us a little bit of a background on how you got into the gambling industry and how you got involved in the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga?
Sure. Well, I'm a longtime resident of the Capital District here in New York, and lucky to grow up only about a half hour from the racetrack.
Nice.
So some of my misspent youth was spent there. So I've been going to the track for 50 years. So the beginnings of my love for horse racing began in my teenage years, going up to Saratoga in the summer. I worked for Governor Mario Cuomo after graduating from law school, and one of my responsibilities was horse racing and Indian gambling at the time, the lottery. So I advised the governor on these subjects and got immersed very deeply into the law and regulations with that experience. And after the governor was invited to leave office in 1994 by the voters, I left public service and went into private practice and represented a number of horse racing and gambling interests over my career. I'm now retired from the lobbying business, but gives me more time to do things like this conference.
Well, tell us about the history of the conference. I mean, how did you get involved in the conference? This is certainly not the first year of it, and tell us about when it started.
Sure. The conference is over 20 years old, actually.
Wow.
It originally was put on by the the Government Law Center of Albany Law School. For the first 19 years, starting back all the way back in 2001, the law school put on a conference every year called the Racing and Gaming, or the Equine, I believe, Equine Institute at Saratoga. And it originally started as a one-day event that just focused on horse racing, but then the market changed, and casinos came to New York, and other forms of gaming came to New York. So the conference was expanded, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago into a two-day event, one day for horse racing, one day for other forms of gaming.
Okay.
And so that went on for, I think, 19 years, and then the law school decided that they just didn't want to put on the conference anymore, and rather than see it close, I decided, well, I'll step up and see if I can't run it myself. I've been involved in the conference with the law school for all of these years, so I thought I had a pretty good handle on how to put the thing together and how it works. Boy, was I wrong. I learned a lot last year. Last year was my first year doing it, and we learned a whole lot about the logistics of putting one of these extravaganzas on. But this year, looking forward to it. Think it's going to be even better than last year.
Well, you certainly have great partners when it comes to this conference. Tell us about some of the sponsors that are involved in the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga, because these are some of the leading companies when you're talking about horse racing and gaming in this country.
Sure. Well, first of all, Spectrum Gaming. Spectrum Gaming is my partner, and they really are the folks who do the nuts and bolts of the conference, and they have lots of experience putting on conferences for the nickel G's folks, the legislators in gaming states. And so without Spectrum, there's no way I could do this. So first of all, Spectrum. And then as far as sponsors go, we have a list of horse racing sponsors. The OTBs in New York have stepped up and are big contributors and sponsors. The Saratoga Harness Track and Casino are a sponsor this year. The Las Vegas Sands is a sponsor, which is great because we're going to talk about one of the big issues we're going to talk about is the expansion of casinos into the New York City area, something that the Sands are very much interested in. So we have a lot of gaming and horse racing sponsors, and then we have some prominent law firms. Greenberg Traurig, Brown and Weinraub, my old firm. The new iteration of Cy Games, Light and Wonder, also a sponsor. So.
Stick around. We'll be right back with more House of Cards.
Drizzly makes it easy to shop a huge selection of beer, wine, and liquor from wherever I am. I just open the app, find what I want, and it's at my door in under 60 minutes.
Drizzly. Ding dong, Drizzly.
You're listening to House of Cards.
I'll bet you $20 I can get you gambling before the end of the day.
No way.
I'll give you 3-to-1 odds. No, 5-to-1. No, 10-to-1. You're on.
Welcome back to House of Cards. Dave Weishottle with you. For those of you just joining us, I am talking with the director of the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga, Pat Brown. What do you see as some of the challenges facing the horse racing and gaming community as we move forward over the next couple of years? Certainly, the past years were kind of challenging. I mean, we had the pandemic. We're going through some financial difficulties in this country. Employment is always an issue. I know in my home state, Atlantic City just averted a worker strike prior to the July 4th holiday, but a couple of Atlantic City casinos still have labor issues to work out. But what do you see as some of the big challenges for the horse racing and gaming community as we move forward?
Well, I'll start with the horse racing industry. As you know, and your listeners probably know, horse racing used to have a monopoly on legalized gambling in this country. And, in the 60s, the state lotteries came back. And, now, over the years, we have the expansion of casinos. Obviously, once located in just Las Vegas and then Atlantic City, and now they're all over the country. We have other gambling opportunities, and so horse racing can't sit back. It has to compete with all these other types of opportunities that folks now have. I mean, who would have thought 10 years ago, rather than talking to your bookie, you could just go on your smartphone and put a bet on the New York Giants. It's really been an explosion of opportunity for the consumer. And if you're in the service industry, which all of this is, competing for those consumer dollars, more competition. You got to be sharper. You got to be innovative. You've got to, you got to bring your A game every day.
Mm-hmm. You're certainly correct, and one of the great things about your conference is the incredible list of speakers that are going to be talking to the people. Can you tell me about some of the speakers and presenters that people can hear from at the event? Because these are really top-notch in the gaming and horse racing field.
Well, sure, I'm happy to. I'll start with the panel that I mentioned a little bit earlier, and it happens to be a panel that I am going to moderate myself, and that's the panel on the expansion of casinos into the New York City market. This is an issue that's been around for forever, really. I mean, if you go back to the 70s, there was all this talk about maybe putting casinos in Coney Island, and it never came to fruition. But it's been an issue for a long, long time, and now it's going to happen. And the state legislature passed a part of the budget back in March and authorized the granting of up to 3 licenses down in the New York City and suburban counties around New York City. So on my panel, we are really honored to have former Governor David Patterson will be a speaker on the panel, and he's now in the employ of Las Vegas Sands, and he is going to speak about what it's like coming into a market that already has some incumbent players. Obviously, Resort Worlds and MGM in Yonkers are established here and are trying to move their racinos, just the they have VLTs now, huge operations, but just VLTs. They want to move that into full-blown casinos. And then you have players like Las Vegas Sands coming into the market trying to compete for one of these licenses. So we have David Patterson. We have Chairman Gary Pretlow, chairman of the Racing and Gaming Committee in the Assembly. Gary is an old hand at racing and gaming issues in the New York State Legislature and was an architect of this expansion into New York City, and he's going to talk about what happened in the legislature to get this done. And then we have players from the industry. We have Jeff Garral, always a great speaker at this conference and other conferences. You'll never leave not knowing what Jeff thinks because he's very he's willing to put out there exactly what he's thinking on any given issue, and it's great because Jeff has the Tioga Casino in the southern tier of New York, but he also, of course, has the Meadowlands, and expansion into the New York City area is going to have an absolute direct impact on gambling, casino gambling in New Jersey and in what Jeff's trying to do over at the Meadowlands. So he'll be on the panel. We have Mike Kane. Mike Kane represents an association of folks that have the upstate casinos and the upstate racetracks and racinos. So clearly there is a question of whether the downstate casinos are just going to dwarf the upstate guys, and Mike will bring that will bring that point of view. So this is going to be a great panel, and we're going to hear. And then, of course, I forgot, we have a representative of Resorts World, and they're going to talk about what it's like really to be almost an incumbent looking to expand and having others come in and try to compete with them. So I'm really looking forward to that panel. I spent a lot of time on it.
Oh, absolutely.
I should move on. The other panel I want to make sure I mention is the horse racing panel on HISA. It's the new federal regulations on horse racing. It's a very controversial issue. People are, polarized around the issue. We are lucky to have Lisa Lazarus, the director of the HISA program out of Washington, and she's going to come into the lion's den, if you will, and talk about this program. And then we have really two really very serious players in the horse racing regulation business. We have Rob Williams. He's the executive director of the Gaming Commission in New York. Rob is arguably the most important person in the horse racing world in New York. He is the lead regulator. And then we have Ed Martin. Ed Martin represents the National Association of Horse Racing Regulators. So that's an issue that a lot of horsemen, a lot of people who aren't horsemen really care about. Kind of what the landscape is going to look like with a new federal involvement in the regulation of horse racing. So looking forward to that one.
Stick around. We'll be right back with more House of Cards. Hey, this is Dave Weishuttle from House of Cards with your House of Cards gaming report for the week of August 1st, 2022. The Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board reported that gaming in the Keystone State broke a record. For the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022, the state recorded over $5 billion in revenue. This is the first time the revenue figure topped $5 billion, and it is 30% higher than the previous year. For this last fiscal year, the state received over $2 billion in tax revenue. The New Jersey Gaming Control Board also reported some good news for Atlantic City casinos. For the first half of 2022, all 9 Atlantic City casinos reported increased revenues from this time last year. For the first half of the year, the Garden State casinos reported $1.3 billion in revenue compared to the $1.1 billion from the first half of 2021. The biggest increase was from Hard Rock, which saw a 27.8% increase in revenue for the first 6 months of 2022. And finally, the poker world has a new champion. Norway's Espen Jorstad won the 2022 World Series of Poker main event. Jorstad defeated a field of over 8,600 poker players to take home the coveted gold bracelet and the $10 million grand prize. According to WSOP.com, the $10 million prize makes Jorstad the most successful Norwegian poker player in history. Congratulations from all of us at House of Cards. Have any news or tips regarding casinos, gaming, or legislation? Send us an email at newsroom@houseofcardsradio.com and follow us on Twitter at HOC Radio.
You're listening to the House of Cards.
Whoa! I think we got a show.
Oh, yeah, we got a show.
We definitely got a show.
Oh, yeah, there's a show. Hey, it's all about ratings, baby, and we got them.
Welcome back to House of Cards. Dave Weishuttle with you. For those of you just joining us, I am talking with the director of the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga, Pat Brown. Sorry about that. Radio has to do its business, you know. Why don't you continue what you were saying before the break?
And the other one I want to, a couple more I want to mention.
Sure,
one is the fixed odds panel. This goes back to something I said earlier to you. Horse racing has to adapt in order to compete. Right now, you can bet on your phone, and you can do prop bets and all kinds of sporting events. And, you know, your bet is not a pari-mutuel bet. It is a fixed odds bet. It is a straight bet. What you bet is what you get. In horse racing with pari-mutuel, that's not the case. You know, you might bet a 4-1 shot in the morning, and the horse goes off at 5-2. So when you're new to the game, that is disconcerting. It puts people off. They don't really understand what they're betting, what they're getting. And fixed odds is a way for the hope is anyway to attract new players into the game. It's controversial. There are people who are for it. There are people who are against it. We have them on this panel. That's going to be a really interesting panel as well. And then the last one I'll mention to you is the horse racing in the metaverse. This is the panel that personally I am looking forward to the most.
Me too. I have a whole bunch of questions for you on that one.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right.
Give me your rundown. Then I gotta, because that's the subject I know least about, NFTs and metaverse. So I'm certainly that's the one I circled on the program on mine.
Well, that's the one that I'm most interested in because I know nothing about it. Most of the other topics on this agenda I've either taught at a law school level or I'm pretty well versed in. This one I don't know about, and I'm really, really looking forward to hearing about this. Now, we're not going to cover the whole landscape in an hour, but I'm hoping that with this panel I can get folks at least a background in what's going on here, because it's happening, and it is a new thing that most players, certainly most people, fans and people in the business that are my age in their 60s have no clue about. But we've got a couple guys from Silks, which is a company in this business, and they're going to talk about creating a virtual stable of horses, and how that works, and how value is exchanged on the web, and they're going to talk about NFTs and cryptocurrency a little bit, but I'm hoping to give folks a base and then have them talk about how that new technology is being used in the horse racing business.
Like I said, that's one of the things that I circled on the program because that's something I know the least about. I mean, every week I see a news story about NFTs and the metaverse and how it can be used for different areas of sports and gaming and everything. It seems like that's the wave of the future. Do you feel that this will be a much-needed revenue stream for the industry? I mean, how everyone's talking about it, it seems like it's the revenue stream of the future, I guess, for a lot of things. But do you see it that way?
Well, I don't know enough about it to give you a very solid answer, but this is what I do know.
Okay.
I go to a lot of these conferences like you do, and, almost at every conference there is some casino executive or racetrack executive standing up in front of the audience and saying, our demographic is aging, our customer base is aging, we need to figure out how to appeal to a younger demographic. And the metaverse, whether guys like me understand it or not, the metaverse is here, and that's where young people are. And so you got to kind of go where your customers are. So to that extent, at least, I think that any of these technological innovations, any of these changes in how you attract people into the game, are great, and maybe will become the big revenue stream. Mm-hmm. Look, it's innovation, right?
Sure,
some of it
sure.
works, a lot of it fails. So we're too new at it, I think, to really predict. But I as I say, I'm excited about that panel. We got some great folks on it, and I want to hope that the people at the conference will enjoy that one.
Well, I want to ask you about the New York City casino panel because being from New Jersey, it's a huge story here, and I just wanted to get your take on the whole issue. How do you think it will affect the gambling industry as a whole when New York City casinos open up? I mean, we saw the effect when New York City allowed mobile sports betting. It became the number one sports betting market in the country. Do you think casinos opening in the New York City area will have that effect on the gaming industry?
Well, yes, I do, but, it's actually pretty unimportant what I think. Mm-hmm. It's more important what the guys with the money think. And the folks who are ready to invest hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars,
sure.
are clamoring for this New York City market. So those are smart people with lots of money who think this is the market to be in. This is one of the last huge untapped casino markets in the world. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to tap into it.
Has there been any opposition to the idea of opening casinos in the New York City area? Are there any more hurdles that have to be overcome to get casinos in New York City, or does it look like it's going to happen?
Well, I think it's going to happen, but there's certainly hurdles. And yes, there has been opposition to this idea forever. For as long as there have been proponents of the idea, there's been opposition to it. Now, I was a lawyer, lobbyist for 35 years and had clients trying to do things in New York City, and it is very difficult atmosphere to do anything. To get a liquor license to open a bar is very, very difficult in a lot of parts of New York City. So the idea of licensing and having go through all the land use regulations and all the local requirements to open one of these grand casinos is very daunting. And I will say this, having followed the creation of the law that authorizes these casinos, there was a lot of concession made to local input. And you can argue whether that's good or bad, but the fact is it is part of the law. So there will be these local panels that have to be created that represent all the various elected officials from a given geographic area, and they're going to have to sign off on the casino plan before it even gets to the state. That's a new little wrinkle, and that could be a huge hurdle.
Okay.
The other thing that's going to be interesting is that these new casinos are going to be subject to local land use laws, local zoning laws, and like many municipalities, New York City has some very restrictive land use laws for parts of the city, mainly Manhattan, but in the outer boroughs as well.
Sure.
So anyway, we're going to hope that we get the casino reps on the panel to talk about how they're going to navigate these two, pretty significant hurdles.
Yeah. Okay, I want you to make a prediction for me. When do you think the first New York City area casino will open? I'm a 45-minute train ride from Manhattan, so I'm making my plans now. Are we talking 2 years? Are we talking 3 years? What's your best guess when a New York City casino could possibly open?
Well, since I'm retired, I'm going to go ahead and do this. If I were still working, I would never do this.
You give me a political answer.
I think that the RFP will be out on the street sometime in the first quarter of next year.
Okay.
It will be, I think bids will be due probably toward the end of the second quarter of next year. They'll be evaluated through the summer, and maybe by Labor Day of 2023, we will have winners, people who are selected, companies who are selected, and then there is the vetting process of actually getting a casino license, which is, not something you do in an afternoon. That's going to take a little while. Mm-hmm. So I think by Labor Day of next year, we'll know who's going to be building the casinos and where they're going to be, and then the casinos took 14 to 18 months to build in upstate when they were being built. It's got to be at least that long in New York City, maybe even a little longer. Now, that's for folks coming in sort of greenfield, going to build a new facility. If you're talking about MGM and Resorts World, if they are successful in getting casino licenses, they obviously already have facilities that they're going to expand or change around or whatever they're going to do with them. So it won't take them nearly as long once they get licensed to get themselves built out and ready to go. So I'll answer your question this way. If Resorts World and or MGM win a license, then I expect that they would be open before the end of 2023.
Stick around. We'll be right back with more House of Cards.
You're listening to the House of Cards.
Why, you cheap crook, stealing a baby's bank. It's only a lend-lease. I figured to bet on the 50 to 1 shot and double the baby's money. Why, you imbecile. Why don't you pick 100 to 1 shot and triple it? Oh, okay.
Welcome back to House of Cards. Dave Weishottle with you. For those of you just joining us, I am talking with the director of the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga, Pat Brown. You know, you mentioned another panel you're having, and it's such a huge issue in the horse racing industry, especially in New Jersey. Here is fixed odds wagering, and you have a great panel. You have people like Joe Asher from IGT and David O'Rourke from the New York Racing Association on that panel, and it's such a huge issue. Where do you see this country moving? Are we slowly moving to fixed odds wagering, or are still states really fighting against that trend?
Well, I think both. I think there are some states that are gonna move more quickly toward fixed odds, and there will be states that will be entrenched against it. It's like turning the proverbial battleship to
Sure.
move from a parimutuel system to a system that I would call parimutuel plus. The base of the system will be parimutuel, but you would have other opportunities like fixed odds, maybe exchange wagering, maybe in-race wagering, those sorts of innovations. It's going to take not only an acceptance in the industry, meaning the owners of these facilities, it's going to take an acceptance in the marketplace, the customers, and then, or alongside of that, you've got to change a whole lot of laws and a whole lot of regulations, and in some places, probably some constitutions. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at the Constitution in New York, it talks about parimutuel wagering on horse races. So to move away now, I've talked to some very clever lawyers, and they've got some great arguments as to why that doesn't really mean what it says, and maybe they're right, and maybe that's going to be the answer. But on the face of it, parimutuel is ingrained and embedded in the horse racing business, and to move away from that is going to take a lot. Mm-hmm. And as I say, the first step is to get the owners, the people like David O'Rourke and the folks who have to make these business decisions to say, yeah, I want that. That's going to be good for my business. And I don't think, we're there in some states, in some places, but we're not there industry-wide. That's for sure. But I think it is an absolutely great opportunity, and it has to be done right. We have Dan Hartman as the moderator of that band, the regulator out of Colorado, and that's going to, Dan is a very thoughtful regulator, and he's going to bring a real perspective to that panel. So,
I mentioned sports betting before, and you have panels covering that as well at the conference. Here in my state, the main reason why sports betting was made legal was to help out the horse racing industry. I mean, for me, horse racing and sports betting are really linked in my mind. That's why I guess parimutuel and fixed odds wagering became a hot issue. And the two most successful sportsbook are racetracks in New Jersey. I mean, the Meadowlands and Monmouth Park. Is that how you feel, that there's a link between horse racing and sports betting? And do you think that with more states allowing sports betting, that's benefiting the horse racing industry?
Yes, I do think they're inextricably linked, because no matter how the law or the reg might want to keep them separate, they're not separate in the customer's mind.
Sure.
The customer doesn't bring, to the table this sort of sophisticated analysis of, that's a horse race and that's a football game, and one has a different betting system and all that. The customer comes to the table and does what they like and what they trust and what they, enjoy doing. And I think that there was the thought of, let's put in the law, in New York let's put in the law that none of these sports books can have horse racing as part of their offering. And that quickly turned out to be a mistake.
Yeah.
People want to be able to bet on the horses and bet on the football game on the same app. So yes, I think there will be customer demand that the two be linked. Now that's going to create all kinds of challenges for the lawyers and the contract people out there. But that'll get itself worked out in the marketplace. And I think sports betting is a huge boon to online wagering on horses.
The great thing about your conference and how you're presenting the topic is that you don't have to be a lawyer or a casino executive to get something out of this conference. I mean, if you're a fan of horse racing or sports betting, you'll get something special from attending. Was that a conscious effort by you to make it accessible to everyone?
Yes, yeah. Let me just talk a little bit about the evolution. When this was started by the law school, this was a conference for New York lawyers about New York laws and regulations and legislation. That was the genesis of this conference. And with the law school, it grew out of that to where we started having business executives come, particularly when it got expanded that second day into other gaming types of issues. So the conference has grown and moved away from that particular New York lawyer focus. And when I took it over, I made the decision that I wanted to be a conference that is useful to lawyers. I don't want to lose that. So we offer CLE credits. We've been approved in Nevada, and our application in New York is pending, and we expect to be approved here for some number of CLE credits. So that's an attraction to the lawyers. And some of the panels, when you go through the agenda, are more directed at lawyers than others. But for the most part, I want the panels to be accessible and interesting to lawyers and non-lawyers, and I want the conference to have a broader scope. Horse racing is not a New York issue. Horse racing is a national and international issue. Gambling and casinos and sports betting, they aren't New York issues. They are national and international issues, and I wanted the conference to reflect that.
Another great thing about the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga is that it's very close by to the historic Saratoga Racecourse. Are you doing anything at the racecourse, any events at the racecourse during the conference?
Yes, this is the first year. I've always thought it just a shame that the conference was held in Saratoga to talk about horse racing, and we didn't go to the racetrack, and going to the racetrack wasn't part of the conference. This year, we've changed up the conference so that one of the days of the conference is a race day, and we're going to have a morning of intense panels on Wednesday the 17th.
Okay.
And then anybody at the conference who's interested can join us at the racetrack, and we're going to have a day at the races, and I am absolutely looking forward to that. We did that, and we added that event specifically to get people who are coming from out of state who are interested, obviously, in gambling issues and horse racing issues, to get them on the track. Because once you go, you're going to go back.
Oh, of course.
And I say this everywhere I go. We're so lucky to have the absolute best horse racing in the world happening at Saratoga for these 6 weeks. And I've always felt it's just a missed opportunity not to get people at the racetrack. So this year we're going to do that. And while I'm at it, I want to mention two other events that we're having where people can come and perhaps have an adult beverage and network and meet new friends and reacquaint with old friends. We'll have a welcome party at a great venue right on Broadway. It's called 408. It's just going to be just a very relaxed but really nice venue. Overlooks the scene on Broadway in Saratoga Springs. That's on the 15th. And then on the 16th, we are going to have a cocktail party and a charity casino night at the iconic Canfield Casino. Canfield Casino, for folks who don't know, is this incredible piece of architecture in the middle of Saratoga Springs. It was designed and built by the same guy who built the racetrack, John Morrissey, in the 1870s, and it was a casino, a very upscale casino for decades. And now it's a venue for weddings and that sort of thing. And we're gonna have a party there. We're gonna have some blackjack tables and roulette tables.
Oh,
and
nice.
we're gonna have some fun gambling, and all the proceeds from the gambling are going to go to this great charity called TRR. They provide services to wounded combat veterans, and part of what they do, they use retired racehorses in their equine therapy. So they're a great organization. It's going to be great to hand them a check, and it's going to be a fun night. It's going to be a lot of fun, and a place where folks at the conference can, come and continue the conversation that we begin in these panels. That's my hope, is that the panels are just the catalyst for a continued conversation.
Now, if someone wants to get involved and attend the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga, what's the website they go to, and how do they sign up to attend the events?
Well, it's all on the website, and that's www.racingandgamingsaratoga.com. Couldn't be more straightforward. You can go there. You can register for a hotel. You can register for the conference. We still have a couple sponsorship opportunities left. A lot of them have been taken, but there are a couple left. There's a sponsorship page there, and we have a news page. We put out several press releases over the last month or so, and so if you go to that website, you can get all the information you need to sign up.
And we certainly have links on our website, too. So if you go to our website and you see it, click on the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga. Pat Brown, thanks so much for coming on and telling us about the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga, which is being held on August 15th through the 17th. And you can check that out at racingandgamingsaratoga.com. It sounds like it's going to be an incredible event, so everyone who's interested in horse racing, sports betting, and in the gaming industry in general should check it out. Pat, thanks so much for coming on and telling us about it.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, that'll do it for us this week. We'll talk to you later on House of Cards.